Hello, welcome back to our Staff Room Shorts. This week we're going to have 5 minutes and 2 questions all about the theme of justice. Okay, so justice is a really important thing to get our heads around. It's one of our cardinal virtues, which means it's one of the core virtues in terms of understanding those practices of our Catholic faith. Now, you might have noticed that we're using the word virtue a lot, and we're talking about virtues in lots of different areas. And that's deliberate because that language is given as a way to maybe rediscover or re-understand some of the habits which are part of our Catholic life and mission in our schools. The thing with the virtue is they're things you have to practice, things you have to do to kind of make them part of who you are. And I suppose justice is something that maybe we practice a bit more often than we realise. How many times during a day do we look at a situation and go, oh man, that's not fair? Often it's usually involving ourselves and we're like, oh man, it's so not fair that they've got this and I've not got that. It is a very human emotion to want things to be fair. But that then reflects the fact that maybe actually if in the way we're created we are maybe seeking that justice, we should maybe extend that to seeking that justice in our world and in our communities. And of course, that justice is not just a case of saying, well, they've got it, so I get it. It's a case of understanding what people are entitled to, what people deserve, and what people should be able to do because of their dignity, because of their worth, because of their value, because like all of us, we are all created in that image of God. Understanding that because each and every person is special and unique and dignified and important, but then justice means everybody having access to the things and making things balanced and fair is really then a reflection of the fact that God has made us that way, and God helps us and inspires us to create a world that is founded in justice. So what does that mean for us? It means two things. It means looking for opportunities where we see injustice, seeing it through the lens of Christ and making sure it's not a kind of, well, they've got it and I want it and they've got it, but actually looking at the case of, is this something that everyone should have? And then actively working to bring about that justice in our world. That idea of seeing something, judging it, and then acting upon it is quite core really to a lot of Catholic social teaching. We'll talk about that over the next kind of few weeks quite a lot. But I want you to think about, first of all, a situation in your community where maybe actually there's an opportunity to bring some justice. Maybe you know there are people in your community that don't have the same access to the same things that everybody does. Can you find a way to make sure everybody has what they need? Everybody has what they're entitled to. It might be a case of looking at how you deal with judgments or things that you have in terms of your behaviour policy, or how you encourage those kind of good behaviours. How do you make sure that people are acting fairly and acting justly? And how do you help people understand what justice really means and what justice really looks like? On a wider scale then, we can think about justice in terms of social justice or global justice. Partners like our friends at CAFOD, for example, work for social justice. They look at situations in the world where people don't have the basic entitlements that they need as human beings, things like food or water or shelter, and work to bring those realities to people because justice dictates that is needed, and that's what people deserve because of their dignity and their value and their worth. So this week, when we're thinking about justice, our 2 questions are going to focus on a local level and a global level. And maybe it might inspire us to maybe see a situation, but also to act and then to do something about that situation. When Christ talks or when Christ teaches, you often see him bringing justice into situations. Often the Pharisees and the teachers of the law will try and trick him or trap him into kind of saying things that are controversial or things that are going to upset people. But he always just approaches every situation with love for the individual, with an acknowledgement that that individual, whoever they are, is special and valuable and worthwhile and dignified, and then an understanding that to work for justice is to give that person what they need. You know, whether it's embracing the leper in the leper colony, talking to the Roman centurion who just wants him to help his daughter out, even though that kind of relationship and conversation is really kind of scandalous at the time. Whether it's talking to the Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus always saw an opportunity to bring about justice, because of course justice is just an expression of love. You know, when we look at all the virtues, when we look at the scripture, it tells us that the greatest of all these things ultimately always is love. And actually, a just world is a world that brings about love and makes love real, that loves the people in need, that loves the people left out, that loves the people that are treated unfairly. So first question is then, can you think of a situation in your community where everyone isn't getting the same, or everyone isn't getting a just and fair kind of experience? Maybe you know there are some people in your community who are in need of something, or could do with help or support, or who can't access things in the same way. How can you make their reality more just? By supporting them, helping them, and working to give them what everybody else has. Second question, can you think of a situation in our world right now that is unjust and unfair? It might be difficult because you might look at these situations and think, that's too big to do anything about. But then I would ask you to think about things like CAFOD, charities, NGOs, people who work all over the world. Investigate one of them, and if you've picked on an issue like access to education, for example, that's very near to our heart as educators, maybe have a look at what CAFOD's doing in terms of helping particularly young women and young girls access education in developing countries. Look at how we can support their work, whether that's through donating, whether that's through advocacy, whether that's through writing for our MPs. We can all act for justice. But like with all of our virtues, if we're going to build a just world, we've got to practice that justice in our daily lives. So think about a situation in your community where we can bring justice, and maybe then a situation in our world where we can also bring an act for justice. In doing so, we recognise the value and worth that we're all made in God's image, and we work to make the world a better reflection of God's kingdom here on earth. That's what justice as a virtue is about. Practicing that love for each other so that everybody has what they're entitled to and what they deserve. A world built on justice and a world built on love. We'll see you soon.